Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into the fascinating, incredibly high-octane world of automotive modification. We're going to look at exactly what happens when you take an already impressive stock luxury vehicle and entirely transform it into a heavily modified street-legal performance machine. Think of it less as a trip to your local mechanic and more like a visit to a very specialized, very extreme doctor.
You know, there's this lyric that perfectly sets the stage for us. Took my car to the clinic, let them check all the vitals. And honestly, that's our central metaphor for today. We're going to treat a luxury vehicle like a patient, undergoing some highly experimental, hyper-advanced performance enhancements. We'll examine its anatomy, upgrade its internal organs, and see just how far we can push the absolute limits of modern engineering.
All right, so here's our medical chart for this explainer. First, power, breathing, and roar. Second, mastering control and grip. Third, refining the aero and look. And finally, number 4, we'll examine the ultimate monster, Brabus.
Okay, let's jump right into section 1. Power, breathing, and roar.
So every modern car has a brain, right? And that brain is the engine control unit, or the ECU. Professional ECU tuning is essentially, well, actually scratch that, it's literally the brain surgery required to take the engine's acceleration and top speed to the next level safely. By tweaking parameters like fuel injection, ignition timing, and the rev limit, a trained technician can unlock vastly better throttle response. It maximizes power across the entire rev range, all without breaking the engine's mechanical limits.
Now, what's really interesting here is how we optimize airflow. Look at these 3 critical breathing upgrades. Upgrading the emission system actually reduces fuel waste, so you're getting eco-friendly performance and surprisingly better fuel economy. Then you have the exhaust system, which eliminates back pressure to enhance horsepower and, of course, give the engine that deep, aggressive roar. Combine those physical changes with the ECU tuning we just talked about, and suddenly your patient is breathing much better and hitting way harder.
Moving right along to section 2, mastering control and grip.
Because let's be real, a massive, powerful heart is totally useless if the car doesn't have strong legs to stay grounded. As you ramp up the power, upgrading your stopping power becomes an absolute necessity. Your brakes are suddenly working exponentially harder to manage all that new speed. This means you have to upgrade to larger brake rotors and multi-piston calipers. They give you a much bigger bite and prevent terrifying brake fade during intense, high-speed use. Simply put, control is just as important as speed.
So how exactly do we connect all that new power to the pavement? It's all about the suspension and the rubber. An upgraded, stiffer suspension gives you sharper cornering and less body roll. Though, you always have to balance that stiffness with how comfortable you want the ride to be. And then the tires. High-end, specialized rubber compounds are absolutely vital for grip. But more importantly, at high speeds, cheap rubber will, quite literally, well, it'll melt. Quality tires are mandatory if you want to survive the extreme heat and sheer physical stress generated at top speeds.
Which brings us to section 3, refining the aero and look.
Now, adding body modifications like spoilers, diffusers, and side skirts, it's not just to make the car look mean. I mean, it does, but this is really about pure physics. You are fundamentally changing the aerodynamics of the car here. These elements dictate exactly how air flows over, under, and around the vehicle, literally pressing it down into the road to utilize all that grip and power we just built. And because they so heavily impact how the car handles its speed, professional installation is crucial. If aero is installed improperly, it can actually do more harm than good.
All right, section 4. Let's look at the ultimate monster, Brabus.
Let's actually apply all this clinical theory to a real-world hyper-saloon. Meet the Brabus Rocket 900. It begins its life as a Mercedes AMG GT 4-door, which means fundamentally it's a practical, albeit very fast, luxury saloon. But the engineers of Brabus put it through their own extreme clinic, transforming this 2.1-ton daily driver into a wide-body absolute beast. It is literally the ultimate case study for everything we've discussed so far. Let's check its vitals, shall we? 888 brake horsepower. I mean, for a luxury saloon, that figure is just terrifying. It shows you exactly how far they push the engine tuning and breathing upgrades.
And the top speed? 205 miles per hour. But here's the craziest part about that number. It's actually electronically limited. The electronic babysitters have to step in at 205 miles per hour strictly to protect the tires from disintegrating under the extreme stress and heat.
So what's the medical bill for this kind of operation? A staggering £387,000. But, you're paying for extreme exclusivity here. Brabus is only ever going to build 10 of these magnificent machines total.
And this brilliantly illustrates what all that money and engineering actually buys you: pure, violent acceleration. The Rocket 900 will do 0 to 62 miles per hour in just 2.8 seconds. If you keep your foot buried, this 2.1-ton vehicle will hit 186 miles per hour, that's 300 kilometers per hour, in a mind-blowing 23.9 seconds.
To pull those numbers off, they take the breathing principles we talked about earlier and dial them up to 11. Carbon fiber intakes grab massive amounts of air right from the front grille, forcing it through two high-performance turbos down into a bored-out 4.5-liter V8 with a new crankshaft and larger forged pistons. Add in a high-pressure fuel pump, and it violently expels all that through a high-flow stainless steel exhaust.
Now, this next bit is absolutely crucial. This engine actually creates too much power. Left to its own devices, this heavily modified engine produces a gargantuan 922 pound-feet of torque. But remember our lesson on control and grip? Brabus actually has to step in and use electronic limiters to cap the output at 774 pound-feet of torque. Why? Because if they didn't, the car would quite literally destroy its own transmission and tires. It's the perfect example of why you have to balance pure power with necessary control.
And to keep this rocket glued to the tarmac, Brabus fits a wide-body kit that makes the car 7.8 centimeters wider than standard, just so they can house ultra-wide rear rubber for maximum grip. Fulfilling all those aero upgrades we discussed, they add aggressive carbon fiber aero extensions and stunning forged wheels with aero discs. But hey, this beast is still fundamentally a luxury patient, right? So the custom interior is absolutely incredible, swimming in this vast ocean of quilted leather and custom aluminum paddle shifters.
So, that really just leaves us with one final question to ponder. When you look at the Brabus Rocket 900, its surgically enhanced engine, its wide-body aerodynamics, and its completely physics-defying speed, is the pursuit of the ultimate modified luxury car worth that £387,000 price tag? It is a fascinating look at the very fine line between brilliant, extreme engineering and sheer excess. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep your curiosity fueled.